Damn it, I can't see the runway. You?
I do not have the runway.
What the heck?
A flight from Belfast ends in disaster.
It's a time of great sadness.
The wreckage provides a baffling clue.
You know, it doesn't make sense. How did they manage to flip over?
It's not a normal thing for an airplane to land upside down.
The search for answers leads to a startling discovery.
Wait a minute. That can't be right.
It's like peeling an onion, you know? You cut away one layer and there's another layer underneath it.
Is airline safety slipping through the cracks?
I don't know what you call this mess.
It came as quite a shock to the investigation.
The city of Cork, on the southern coast of Ireland. A place famous for its deep-water harbor and its foggy weather. Today, that weather has put Manx 2 Flight 7100 into a holding pattern.
If the fog doesn't clear, we could head for our alternate. Land at Waterford.
The commuter flight from Belfast, Northern Ireland, was supposed to land in Cork at 9 a.m.
Maybe Kerry.
30 minutes later, it's still circling the airport.
Cork faces out to the Atlantic, so fog is very common, and fog will roll in and it will roll out, sometimes at no notice, sometimes it may last for 4 hours, other times it may last for 2 or 3 days.
In our part of the world, we have a saying, it was like pea soup, because it was very, very thick.
Hope we land soon. Got work to do.
There are 10 passengers waiting to land this morning, including Lawrence Wilson, traveling to Cork for the day on business.
I was going to Cork to do forklift truck training. I had been in that same location doing the same course several times before, so it was sort of really old hat to go down. I've done it before.
Today's flight is aboard a Fairchild Metro 3.
It's a very small plane. I'm 6 foot. I couldn't have stood up inside it.
The 19-passenger turboprop is designed for short, low-cost flights.
The airline in question was serving Belfast to Cork, which is a route that wouldn't be economically justified in a jet like a 737 or an Airbus.
Flying the plane today is First Officer Andrew Cantle of England. While he concentrates on circling over Cork, Spanish Captain Jordi Sola Lopez is checking the weather at nearby airports.
Surface wind is calm, visibility is 900 meters in fog.
All copy, thanks very much. And the weather, is it improving in Cork?
Oftentimes these aircraft are crewed by 2 pilots.
Sam Stodero is a flight instructor on the Metro 3.
The pilot flying is responsible for aircraft flight path control, configuration changes, etc. The pilot monitoring is going to be focusing his attention outside and inside, looking for the airport environment, the runway environment.
Okay. Another small improvement at runway 17.
At 9:35, the controller tells the captain the fog has lifted slightly.
Visibility at touchdown zone is 500 meters.
Okay, in that case, any chance to perform one approach there?
You are clear to land runway 17.
Clear to land, runway 17.
After 20 minutes circling the airport, the crew must now shift focus to the complex task of getting their plane on the ground.
We're good. I've landed in worse.
There was only the one lady on the plane, and I was just talking as if I had experience. I had no experience at all. I just wanted to kind of reassure her that everything was going to be okay.
Glide slope is coming in.
The pilots confirm the plane is lining up with the runway.
Okay, glide slope coming in.
And they're descending at the correct speed.
Speed's okay.
You're using your heading indicator, your horizontal situation indicator, and other indicators like the attitude indicator to put the aircraft flight path where it's supposed to be.
I took control of the power, okay?
The captain tells the first officer he'll adjust the engine power during the landing.
That's fine, yeah.
All daylights are on. Landing gear is down. Yes, the weather is much better here.
So I was on the left-hand side of the plane, looking out just behind the wing. And I remember I couldn't see anything, no runway, nothing at all.
Okay, minimum. Continue.
The plane descends through its minimum, or decision altitude.
It's called decision altitude because that's the altitude that if you do not have the runway environment in sight, the decision to go missed is made.
The captain pulls the thrust levers back to reduce power. Unexpectedly, the plane rolls hard to the left.
What the heck? Go around! Go around!
I remember looking out the window and seeing grass about 10 foot below me, and I knew that wasn't good. Thought I was gone. I did for a minute or two. I thought I was gone. I thought, this is it. I'm out of here. That's all about it.
A sudden alarm warns controller Sean Patrick he may be facing a disaster. The radio in the tower has picked up an emergency beacon from the plane.
Max 7100, contact the tower.
We didn't realise there was a problem until the emergency locator transmitter went off.
Max 7100.
With the airport shrouded in fog, he can't see a thing.
Might be nothing. A heavy landing can trigger that alarm.
There's a minute there where you're in limbo. You're waiting for the crash crews to ramp up, for them to actually deploy. So you're just there waiting.
Power to fire crew. Can you see the plane yet?
You're hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. The ground controller instructed the fire crews to deploy to the threshold of runway 17, and they then entered the runway and commenced a search pattern.
Crash, crash, crash.
And then they called crash, crash, crash on the ground frequency. And it was only at this stage that we became aware that the aircraft had actually crashed on landing.
Manx 2 Flight 7100 has slammed into the mud beside runway 17. Rescue workers quickly douse the flames and get to work freeing the survivors.
I remember daylight coming into the plane, but everything was so crushed and stuff. Then he come to me and had to prise the two chairs, the one in front and the one behind, to try and get me out. I had to reach in with a penknife and reach down in and cut the seat belt to actually get me relieved. And I got standing up in the part of the plane which wasn't that badly crushed. I only realised then that the plane was upside down. I was standing on the roof and I looked up and the chairs were up above me.
Of the 12 people on board, 6 have been killed, including both pilots.
It's a huge, significant event that no controller ever imagines will happen. But no matter how harrowing it is for them, it's nothing compared to what actually happened to the people on board, and our sympathy would lie with those and their families.
It's a time of great sadness for all who have died. Their families are grieving, and we need to maintain time and space for that.
This is Ireland's deadliest crash in nearly 45 years. Cork Airport is notorious for its fog. Many people are speculating the poor weather is to blame.
A lot of flights are cancelled in and out of Cork every year because of the conditions. There was quite some controversy about the decision to build the airport there in the first place.
That controversy is sure to be reignited as news crews descend on the small airport and begin broadcasting images of the aftermath.
Certainly the airport will not be operational for a good period of time while they conduct their investigation.
The Manx 2 crash at Cork was a major news story. Questions were asked about the safety of flying, so it mustn't have been a very easy thing for the Irish investigators to approach this.
Ireland's Air Accident Investigation Unit is immediately under pressure to find out what went wrong.
Pictures from the scene in Cork showed the aircraft wings were shorn off and the entire front half of the fuselage was crushed.
News that Manx 2 Flight 7100 crashed in dense fog provides an immediate suspect. Investigators ask controllers to tell them more about the weather the pilots were facing
Sean Patrick, how can I help?
and how it affected the flight.
The controller will be a crucial part of any investigation. They can advise exactly what information they gave, what the weather conditions were like at the time, and what was actually said.
They immediately hear something troubling.
They'd already done two go-arounds. They attempted a third.
The pilots had already tried landing twice before they crashed.
A go-around or a missed approach procedure is any time an aircraft arrives at the bottom of the runway threshold and is unable to continue the landing attempt. They will power up and reconfigure for a climb and climb away.
Clear to land, runway 17.
The pilots attempt their first landing just after 9 a.m. They try to line up with runway 17 and descend to about 100 feet from the ground. But all they can see is the fog.
Damn it, I can't see the runway. You?
Negative. I do not have the runway.
Pilots are not supposed to land unless they can clearly see the runway.
Go around.
Roger. Go around.
Ten minutes later, the crew decides to try a different tactic.
Any possibility of proceeding to runway 35?
Maybe on the other side, the sun won't be shining on us.
They ask if they can circle around to a runway on the other side of the airport. They hope they'll be able to see more clearly with the sun at their back.
Doesn't seem much better.
This time, they descend to just 91 feet from the ground, lower than a 10-story building. But they still can't see the runway.
Go around.
Whoa! You really come up very, very steep up out of the fog, and that was the only time that I would say all the passengers really got excited, because we all went, whoa, because of the steepness that he pulled it up out.
Controllers don't know what went wrong on the third landing attempt.
Visibility at touchdown zone is 500 meters.
Only that the pilots opted to try runway 17 again, instead of diverting to a different airport.
Okay, in that case, any chance to perform one approach there?
You're cleared to land runway 17.
After making a second go-around, there's significant stresses and internal pressures that exist because there's now two attempts that were unsuccessful. So oftentimes pilots will feel internal pressure to make it happen.
Going out! Go around!
Frame, Libby.
On runway 17, engineering lead Graham Liddy surveys the crash site. Most of the plane has come to rest upside down at the side of the runway. For Liddy, the first question is obvious.
Doesn't make sense. How did they manage to flip over?
It was immediately obvious that the airplane traveled a long distance in an inverted position. And that immediately starts to suggest that control was actually lost. It's not a normal thing for an airplane to land upside down.
Liddy and his team are desperate for any information that might explain why the landing went so horribly wrong. Their best hope, the plane's flight recorders. They capture what the pilots do and say in the cockpit.
We were very anxious to get this information as quickly as possible.
But patience is required. It's too soon to say exactly how long it might take to retrieve the crucial data from the recorders.
Invariably, the data from the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder takes a little bit of time to download and to analyze.
Okay. No one touches anything until we record exactly where it is.
Meanwhile, he focuses on the wreckage strewn along the runway.
The big issue is never to speculate. It's to go and evaluate the evidence and then come up with an analysis of what actually happened.
The trail of aircraft debris stretches almost 200 meters, from the point the plane first touched down to where the main fuselage came to rest in the mud. Each small piece along that trail could be an important clue.
A lot of useful information about the history of those events or the sequence of those events can be derived from the marks that the aircraft makes when it makes initial contact with the ground.
What the heck? Cockpit sign there, please. Wiper blade, please.
Recording the location of every piece of wreckage can be a time-consuming task. Liddy decides he needs some high-tech help.
How quickly can you get me a laser scanner?
The laser scan is a facility where you can actually scan the entire area and produce a three-dimensional picture of the accident site. And it records all the positions of these pieces of wreckage.
Thank you.
Until he can finish his work, the runway at Cork remains closed.
There's obviously a lot of pressure to get the airport back into operation again. That's a pressure you just have to accept.
But it's not the only pressure Liddy faces. He's all too aware that travelers across Ireland are nervously waiting to hear what caused the island's deadliest air disaster in decades.
Read about this.
The 3D scanner has arrived, and Graham Liddy can get to work surveying the Manx 2 crash site. The spinning head uses laser light to capture the exact position of every piece of wreckage, as well as the contours of the runway. It creates a virtual crash site that investigators can revisit down the road.
You may not need it all, but at least you have it captured now and you're not faced with the embarrassing situation of, well, we've moved it all and we've destroyed this and we've restored the runway and all these marks are now gone.
With the scan complete, the wreckage is taken to a hangar for further study. Every system needs to be checked for signs of mechanical failure. They focus first on the control surfaces on the wings and tail that pilots use to control the plane.
This particular aircraft, all the control systems are cable operated, as is normal of an airplane of this size and vintage.
What the hell? You need to go right. I am.
If any of the cables break mid-flight, it can lead to a catastrophic loss of control. That's exactly what happened 3.5 years earlier and half a world away in Tahiti. A twin otter climbs out after takeoff from the island of Maria. At 400 feet, a badly worn control cable suddenly snaps. There's nothing the pilot can do as his plane speeds towards the ocean. The impact kills all 20 people on board.
Do you have those cables matched?
In Cork, Investigators soon discover that not all the Metro 3's cables are intact. Some are broken, raising the critical question: did they wear out and snap just as the plane was about to land? The team studies the cables carefully to see if they can figure out why they broke.
There's a distinctive difference between a cut cable and a cable that is actually fractured.
They find no evidence of metal fatigue, and no sign the cables wore down gradually through the years.
So we were able to determine that in this particular case, the separation of the cable wasn't caused by a mechanical failure over a period of time.
Investigators conclude the cables were cut during rescue operations. They have nothing to do with the crash.
They had to cut into the belly of the aircraft in the cockpit floor area, which is unfortunately an area through which all the control cables run in this particular kind of airplane.
The finding rules out one potential cause.
Yes.
But leaves investigators with no new leads as they endure intense pressure to announce a cause.
It's a very, very demanding, very specialized role, and it's vital that it is done properly.
Investigators hope the results of the 3D laser scan will give them the breakthrough they so desperately need.
Bring up the crash site.
The scan lets investigators see the exact position of the plane as it careened down the runway.
We're actually able to determine all these marks with a precision of millimeters.
Almost immediately, the strategy begins to pay dividends.
We know the first bit of debris came from the right wingtip.
We found navigation light glass from the right-hand side of the airplane. It's green glass to the left of the center line.
Aircraft wings have color-coded navigation lights. Red on the left, green on the right, so other planes can tell which direction they are flying.
What the heck? Go around!
It gave us an initial clue that the wingtip was attached to the aircraft at the point of initial ground contact, and the aircraft was severely rolled to the right.
Now, the plane would have been inverted by this point. Yes, that looks good.
Using the position of other pieces of debris, investigators plot the entire sequence of the crash.
Well, we know one thing. The plane was out of control before it hit the ground.
Part of the process of an accident investigation is to find out what happened. And then we go on to the next stage, which is to find out why it happened.
The bizarre wing-down position of the Metro 3 leads investigators to search for defects in the cockpit flight instruments. In particular, the dials and gauges that tell pilots the position of their plane.
You need to go right.
I am.
If one of the flight instruments malfunctioned, it may have confused the pilots, which could explain the sudden roll.
So the only way you can check all that out is actually take those instruments out of the aircraft and send them away for testing.
But when investigators examine those instruments, they are no closer to solving the mystery of Flight 7100.
There was some impact damage on this instrumentation on the aircraft, but we were actually able to verify that the instruments actually were working okay.
Investigators will need another strategy if they ever hope to understand why a passenger plane lost control and fell from the sky.
Okay, let's hear it.
Black box data from Flight 7100 is finally in the hands of investigators. But will it give them the breakthrough they're hoping for?
All copy, thanks very much. And the weather, is it improving in Cork?
The voice recorder has captured the pilot's conversation in the crucial moments before the crash.
Speed's okay.
Liddy listens as the pilots discuss their landing preparations. At this stage, everything seems normal.
I took control of the power, okay?
Then, he hears something unexpected.
Yeah, that's
fine, yeah.
The captain's gonna handle the power? What kind of plan is that?
They're starting to deviate from standard procedures by doing things like splitting command of the aircraft or control of the aircraft, which is not a good idea.
Normally, the pilot flying the plane would be the one adjusting the engine throttles.
If someone else is making those changes, there's going to be a delay in the response from the pilot flying, an unnecessary and undesired response.
Okay, minimum.
But it's not only that decision that seems off. There's also something odd about the sound of the engines.
The cockpit voice recorder can also give you a lot of information about the acceleration of the engines being powered up, the engines being powered down, so you can actually glean quite an amount of information about that.
Going out.
Go around.
Can you try and just bring up the engine sounds? Sounds like those two engines were operating at different power levels.
The difficulty in this situation is that it's a twin-engine aircraft, so the cockpit voice recorder will tell you something is going on, but it doesn't tell you which engine it actually is.
Searching for something that could explain the mysterious sounds coming from the engines, Liddy studies engine performance data from the flight recorder. It confirms his suspicion. The left engine was producing more power than the right engine, something not uncommon on prop planes like the Metro 3. Uneven engine thrust does make it slightly more difficult to keep the plane flying level, especially at low airspeeds. It's one more thing for pilots to think about during a complicated landing.
Wait a minute.
Liddy notices something even more troubling.
It looks like engine number 1 went into reverse.
Turboprop engines use the angle or pitch of the blades to change the direction of airflow.
The propeller has an angle and through rotation takes a bite out of air, like a screw. When selecting reverse, what's happening to the propeller pitch is it's flattening out and going into a negative blade angle, causing air to be pushed forward instead of aft.
That is one thing you don't want to happen in flight, because it can actually reduce the airplane to below its stalling speed, so the airplane will actually stall.
What the heck?
The data suggests the captain brought the power levers back too far, putting the more powerful left engine into reverse.
If one were to do that in flight, you're going to have a forward moment on the right wing, you're going to have an aft moment on the left wing. And in this case, it caused a severe roll to the left.
Go around.
The captain immediately tried to correct his mistake by pushing the throttles forward. But again, the uneven engine thrust caught him off guard.
Left engine, powered up faster, pushed them over to the right.
That roll was, and yaw was quite vicious and actually caused the airplane to go right over on its side.
I took control of the power.
After 2 aborted landings, perhaps the captain was trying to help the first officer deal with the power imbalance by taking control of the throttles.
Okay, minimum.
The captain probably had some concern about the first officer's ability to manage all of those parameters himself.
But it only made matters worse.
If the first officer, who was the pilot flying, had control of the power levers and the yoke, the flight controls, he would have felt and known where the power levers were at.
It makes the whole task of steering the aircraft much more difficult, because you don't have control over the power.
These guys made a lot of rookie mistakes.
Investigators are left with a chilling prospect that a stunningly bad decision by the crew of Flight 7100 may have led to the deaths of 4 passengers. They need to know more about both pilots. How experienced were they? And what kind of training did they bring to the job?
Focusing on how the crew handled the situation. It should have been within their competency to deal with it in a satisfactory manner. They didn't. Why?
Both pretty young. Not much experience either.
They soon learned both pilots were new to their roles in the cockpit.
The captain had been promoted to captain 4 days previously, and the first officer had been hired 3 weeks previously. So both of them had minimal experience in their respective duty positions.
Even more troubling, Sola Lopez hadn't finished all the training required to captain this plane. And First Officer Cantle never completed his final check flight, a must for any pilot.
For an airline to pair a new first officer with a new captain is not standard practice. Most airlines have what is called a green-on-green prohibition. So new captain, new first officer cannot be paired together. Most often, air carriers will require a captain to have 100 hours in his duty position prior to serving with a newer first officer.
Was there anything unusual or out of the ordinary?
The discoveries lend new weight to some unusual details about the flight from surviving passengers. The flight crew seemed to have no support from the airline. They had to do everything, even adjust the cabin seats.
Some of the passengers on the flight thought that this was highly unusual.
This plane was flying around the clock.
Investigators learned the plane was used to transport cargo the night before.
The Fairchild Metro, operated by Manx 2, had an alter ego in the nighttime when it operated as a mail plane on behalf of the British Post Office, Royal Mail, and the seats were taken out every night.
The seats had to be reinstalled for the morning passenger flight.
Oh, just a moment, gentlemen. We'll be right with you.
Welcome aboard. Don't worry, just a little last-minute adjustment.
These safety cards can be found in the pockets on the seat backs in front of you.
With no flight attendants on board, the first officer had to take on extra duties.
The seat belt is fastened and adjusted like this, and unfastened like this.
One of the pilots came out and actually done something and showed us how to put on the belts and how to pull it up and stuff like that there, and showed you the emergency exits and stuff like that.
Sit back, relax, and thanks for choosing Manx2.com.
Working on the seats, loading bags, doing the safety briefing. Seems like these guys were doing everything. Question is, how did that affect their flying?
Investigators scrutinized the pilot's activities in the days preceding the crash.
It's very important that we have a full understanding of how focused on flying the aircraft the flight crew actually are, and whether they're being, to a certain extent, distracted by peripheral duties, such as fixing seats, giving safety briefs to passengers.
Looks like neither of them was getting enough sleep.
With all their extra duties, neither pilot has enough time to rest between shifts. It's a dangerous violation of aviation regulations.
A pilot that extends his working day, even if he's not flying, is clocking up fatigue. He's clocking up a sleep deficit.
Damn it, I can't see the runway. You?
Negative. I do not have the runway. Go around.
Fatigue could explain why the pilots were overwhelmed by a challenging landing at a fog-bound airport. Investigators are desperate to learn more about the operation of the airline they worked for, Manx 2.
If you don't hire the pilots, who does?
What they uncover is stunning. Manx 2 isn't an airline at all. It only sells the tickets.
Manx 2 was what people call a virtual airline. The aircraft were not under the direct control of Manx 2. Manx 2 was a shell company which basically just sold tickets on the flight.
It came as quite a shock to the investigation. So that immediately alerts you to the fact that there's something a bit non-standard going along here.
How does Manx fit into the daily operation of this plane?
Investigators suddenly realize that understanding the full story behind what went wrong now depends on tracing a convoluted international paper trail.
They don't do maintenance. That's farmed out to a company in Spain.
It's like peeling an onion, you know? You cut away one layer and there's another layer underneath and you keep on going. And it was a very difficult process for the investigation, and it took a long time.
The only plane on Earth that never breaks down.
Investigators pore over the logbooks pilots use to keep track of maintenance problems during flight.
More than 100 hours of flight, and not so much as a worn gasket. Nothing.
Almost unbelievably, not a single recent mechanical issue has been logged.
It would be extremely unusual for an aircraft to operate for 106 hours without having some kind of defect that should have been noted in the maintenance log. And yet the maintenance log and the tech log is as clean as a whistle.
The history of aviation is littered with examples of poor aircraft maintenance leading to disaster. In September 1991, Continental Express Flight 2574 is on approach to Houston, Texas. It's clear and calm when the commuter plane suddenly plummets from the sky. The pilots have lost all control. The twin turboprop slams into a farm below. All 14 people on board are killed. Mechanics had neglected to replace a row of screws on the plane's horizontal stabilizer the night before. When the piece came loose in flight, the pilots never had a chance. Investigators in Cork have uncovered more disturbing facts about Manx 2.
That's never a good sign.
The airline hasn't been paying its crews on time.
Smaller airlines like Manx 2 are always operating on the margins economically. They're always struggling to survive.
The plane is owned by a Spanish bank, leased to a Spanish company, which then subleased it to another company. And none of those companies are Manx 2.
It was a fairly complicated, convoluted arrangement. It didn't have structures that would guarantee confidence, shall we say, in its safety.
Kerry is about 11 minutes away.
Play it again for us, please.
The shockingly inadequate management of Manx 2, along with the company's financial difficulties, leads investigators to suspect the young pilots felt extra pressure to land in Cork as scheduled, in spite of the bad weather.
If the fog isn't clear, we could head for alternate, land at Waterford.
I think it would be safe to assume that there were certain implied pressures from the air carrier that not making it to the destination was ill-favored. I would imagine that there were pressures for them to complete the job regardless of the risks.
Whether there's Austin here, maybe Kerry.
The pilots seem uncertain what to do in the face of bad weather.
They really don't want to divert.
Kerry is about 11 minutes away.
Okay. Well, at least we know that the weather's all right there, so we've got it, got it as a backup.
The crew checks the weather at a number of nearby airports, but seems reluctant to land anywhere but Cork.
All copy.
Thanks very much. And the weather, is it improving in Cork?
Another small improvement.
Runway 17?
Bad idea, guys.
If they'd landed at a strange airport, they've no infrastructure to support them. They probably don't even have a credit line to buy fuel.
Landing at an alternate airport could leave the pilots on the hook for a range of expenses. Everything from airport fees to the cost of transporting all their 10 passengers by bus or taxi back to Cork.
Okay, minimum. Continue.
It looks more and more like the pilots' lack of support from the airline forced their hand in deciding to go ahead with the fog-bound landing at Cork.
These were two guys flying at the very long end of a very, very narrow stick with very, very little support.
The Manx 2 crash investigation has revealed that there is no single cause behind the accident. Instead, it stemmed from a deadly chain of mistakes and circumstance. Heavy fog that put an inexperienced and overworked crew under extra pressure, leading to a piloting error that was compounded by poorly maintained engines.
The engines were producing uneven power for more than 100 hours of flight, and not one pilot reported it.
It's a fairly major red flag if maintenance issues are not to the fore.
Okay, minimum.
If the uneven engine power had been reported, it might have been fixed, but investigators find no record of anyone trying.
Continue.
The fault went unnoticed, or if it was noticed, it wasn't attended to.
If the Metro 3's engine power had been properly balanced,
Go around! Go around!
there's a chance they could have recovered after the captain mistakenly reduced the throttles too far. Instead, the uneven engine thrust sent the plane into a severe roll that resulted in the crash.
All these things lined up. Poor judgment by the pilots, bad decisions that they made, the fog, the problems with the throttle. Remove any one of those issues from the equation and you might not have had an accident.
The investigation has also exposed the virtual airline at the center of the disaster. Owned by Spanish interests, but operating from the Isle of Man, Manx 2 has somehow slipped through the cracks of aviation oversight.
The day-to-day management of the aeroplane seemed to fall between the ticket seller and the aircraft owner. And in actual fact, the Spanish authorities stated that they were unaware of this remote operation.
I don't know what you call this mess, but it's not an airline.
The investigation team generally was appalled when we actually discovered what was actually going on.
This crash focuses the world's attention on a growing safety threat. Massive holes in the regulations that govern small commercial airlines in Europe. Companies where crews are generally younger, less experienced, and expected to work long hours with limited ground support.
There's a lot of blame and fault with the crew members themselves. However, the air carrier has significant fault in this accident as well, because they allowed for the situation to arise where you had two inexperienced crew members paired together with a real lack of leadership and overall oversight from the part of the company.
In December 2012, Manx 2 ceased operations and the company was liquidated. The final report lists a number of factors contributing to the crash, including fatigue, pilot error, and the malfunctioning engine.
I have a huge amount of empathy for the passengers in the back of the airplane.
We're good. I've landed in worse.
They went out and they bought tickets to fly on a scheduled airline service within Europe. And as a result, these passengers, 4 of them were killed and 4 of them were seriously injured. And that should never have actually happened.
This accident was 100% preventable.
Looking into it and discovering what was wrong is good, but it's 10 times better if that's acted on and something permanently done to make sure that this doesn't repeat itself. Don't want history repeating itself with this type of accident.